Today we're going to talk about crystallized honey and why it crystallizes. Does it harm the honey in any way? And what we can do to correct the crystallization. So the crystallization of natural raw honey that has not been pasteurized is totally normal. It has no effect on the honey quality or taste. It does affect the texture. And some people actually prefer the crystallized honey if they're utilizing it for cooking or spreading on toast, where it is less runny and a little easier to manage. However, if you don't like the crystallization, there are some things you can do to correct it. And most importantly, there's ways you can do it without damaging the natural properties of the honey by overheating it. So the crystallization happens when the glucose separates from the water that is in the honey. And not all honeys crystallize in the same manner. Some of them have larger crystals than others, some are smaller crystals. And this is largely due to the types of, the types of honey, where the bees are foraging for their nectar and thereby creating slightly different honeys. And it affects the way it crystallizes. As you can see from our two examples here, we have one large jar here that the bottom half is crystallized, where the top half is still liquid honey. The smaller jar here is completely crystallized. One of the things that tends to affect crystallization, other than just time, is the temperature in which the honey is stored in. So you may notice that sometimes your honey tends to crystallize throughout the winter months, but you wouldn't have noticed that in the summer months. So cooler temperatures over time tend to increase the rate at which honey will crystallize. However, it can be affected, how quickly it crystallizes is affected by the type of honey that it is. So in order to actually decrystallize your honey, is as simple as just warming the honey. So you can see the differences in the honeys and the crystallization. I'm going to take and shine a light through it and kind of bring it closely to the camera here. And you can really see the bottom half, how it's got lots of crystals in it, and how our top half of our jar is still pure liquid honey. And this jar here, you can see as well, has some coarse crystals up top. And it's pretty much 100% crystallized, pretty thick. So decrystallizing the honey is very simple. We're going to take our honey in a jar, as it is right here, and we're going to place it in warm water and let it sit in that warm water. The trick is to maintain the water temperature between 95 and 110 degrees. This will get the honey warm enough that the crystals will melt back, but it will not exceed a temperature that will damage the natural raw properties of the honey. So, as you can see here, we've placed our large jar of honey in a pot of warm water. I've got a meat thermometer in here, and at the moment it was 110 when I first put the jar in. It's dropped to 108 degrees. And so we'll just leave the thermometer in there and we'll watch it. And if it starts to dip below 95 degrees, I'll take a little bit of warm tap water and put back around it to keep it up to that temperature. And the rest is just letting it sit and waiting. We're going to go ahead and put our second jar in as well, because it can sit in the warm water at the same time. And as you can see, we have the majority of the crystallized honey submerged. And we're still at 104 degrees, which is a fine temperature, 104. And we'll set the timer and see how long it takes. So we're back to inspect our honey. It's been 20 minutes. Our temperature has dropped a little bit below 95, so we're going to have to put fresh warm water in the pot. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick look and see if there's any change in our honey. We're not seeing any drastic change. I see a little bit of clarity on this side here as that honey is beginning to warm up to the same temperature as the water. And we'll take a look at this one right here. And here again, it still hasn't made much changes. But one thing to remember is the honey was at room temperature, which is around 70 degrees. And so it's absorbing the heat from the water right now, and it'll need to get up to that 95 plus degree temperature to begin melting. So it's going to take some more time and the changing of our water for this process to continue. So after several refills, trying to maintain our water temperature, and our crystallized honey was taking its own sweet time in melting, we decided to give our crock pot on the keep warm setting a try to see at what temperature it would maintain our water. So we put our already heated water at 110 degrees into the crock pot, put it on keep warm, and for the last half hour it's been maintaining 102 degrees. So this may be a good option for others if it's taking a lot of time to decrystallize your honey and you do not have the time to constantly monitor water temperature. If in fact you have a crock pot that has a keep warm setting, it may be an option for you. One disclaimer is that you'll still want to use a thermometer because different crock pots cook at different temperatures, especially the keep warm setting, so you want to ensure that your particular crock pot doesn't exceed that 110 degree temperature range. So we're at the 48-hour mark decrystallizing our honey, and we can see that this one's almost done, just a few crystals left at the bottom, and our big jar is not almost done, but it's definitely much better than it was. And patience is the key with it. So it's been 96 hours, and the vast majority of our honey is decrystallized, only a little bit left in the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and pour this honey off into another jar, and we're not going to worry about the last little bit of crystals in the bottom of the jar. There's our other one, and only just a little bit of crystals in the bottom. And we can do the same thing with it. We can pour the honey off, and then we'll melt this last little bit, get it out the jar, and refill it.